It starts with a solitary click of the courtroom door, a sound so acute it cuts through the silence like a threat. Cameras snap once, and then again, but within, the atmosphere is thick, heavy with the specters of promises unfulfilled long before anyone ever testified. Kody Brown sits at the defense table, his hair pulled back more tightly than normal, his fingers drumming against the wood in a pattern that sounds impatient but feels afraid. In front of him, Christine holds her eyes forward, a serene mask concealing the tempest that waited years to be unleashed. The judge clears her throat. The voice of the bailiff booms in the chamber, and all at once, this is no longer a family squabble, it's a reckoning. And already you can feel it, some inflammatory word about to be uttered that cannot be unsaid. The first witness is summoned, Janelle. Her gait is slow, measured, each step weighted with duty and treachery entwined. She looks momentarily in Kody's direction, a quiet flash of common experience, before lifting her hand to take the oath. The audience leans forward. Even Robyn appears wan. When Janelle begins to speak, her voice shakes just barely enough to compromise her composure. She speaks of the years when all seemed perfect on television. Dinner with the family, laughter, religion. But behind the grins, tension had been so taut it might have burst at any moment. She explains to the court how money, love, and attention were always unequally distributed, how Robyn's birth disrupted the balance of all they'd created. The whispers in the room increase. The judge slams her gavel for quiet. You can sense the air thicken, as if everyone is aware that this is only the start of something that will dismantle the family piece by piece. Kody's lawyer protests, insisting it's not about jealousy, it's about lies. But when Christine's attorney rises, there is a spark of anger in her eyes. Your Honor, she says, we plan to demonstrate that this isn't just a family feud. It's about emotional manipulation, domination, and years of muffled torment. The air is charged with murmurs. One reporter takes down notes, pen scratching like interference on a background. Kody's jaw clenches, his fists whiten on the table. Janelle goes on, describing the nights when fights rang out louder than prayer, when trust was replaced with tears, and when Christine started making plans to escape, not only the marriage, but the whole system that silenced her. Her voice breaks only once, and for an instant you can glimpse the agony beneath her calm. This is the sort of testimony that doesn't merely narrate, builds it into memory. When she concludes, the courtroom seems to be suspended in time. The judge acknowledges her and excuses the witness. Christine breathes slowly, her chest heaving as though she's held her breath for decades. And then there is the surprise. Robyn asks to address, not as a witness, but as someone who still believes in love. What she says creates tension instantly. The judge pauses, then grants it. Robyn approaches, eyes welling with tears. She speaks quietly, passionately, her voice begging. She tells Kody is not a monster, that people can become desperate because of love, that at times attempting to preserve a family appears as controlling it. Some of them nod, others scowl. Christine is unable to conceal the look of disbelief on her face. You call it love, she says under her breath. I call it control. The courtroom gasps. Robyn spins around, her voice trembling. You don't know what it's like watching him disintegrate every evening after you went away. The following silence feels interminable. Kody finally shifts his gaze, eyes fixed on Christine, anger and heartbreak mixed together. The judge has to step in and remind everyone that emotions cannot substitute for evidence. But by this time, tension is electric, almost too much to bear. And it's where every viewer leans forward, because this is no longer about law. It's about truth, naked and unvarnished. The next witness is surprising Meri. Her arrival creates another wave of murmurs. She sits, her face impassive, her hands shaking slightly as she takes the oath. She begins in subdued restraint, explaining how she used to think they could all make plural marriage function through faith and patience. But as the questions turn deeper, her composure unravels. She confesses to years of emotional disconnection, to nights when she'd hear arguments through paper-thin walls, to moments she realized her role had receded into silence. He stopped seeing me, she says quietly. Everybody stopped seeing one another. The words fall like a curse and an admission. Kody squirms uncomfortably, turning away. Christine's attorney continues, asking if Kody ever favored Robyn. Meri pauses, nods, and welling up in tears. "Always Robyn," she says softly, and the courtroom breaks out again. It's the sort of truth that can't be unseen, once you know that every smile on television was actually just a mask cracking in slow motion. The judge demands order, but it's too late. Everybody in that room now looks at Kody differently, not as the charming patriarch, but as a man whose kingdom is about to collapse before him. He leans into his lawyer, muttering something no one can quite hear, but his face reveals it: fear, raw and unadulterated. Christine observes, her own face impassive, almost beatifically calm, as if she is witnessing justice finally emerge after years in the shadows. Her attorney returns to stand once more, this time clutching a sheaf of papers, budgeting reports, texts, records of favoritism, and coercion. Kody's lawyer protests again, and coercion. The proof is inputted. Screens glow with texts, tiny gestures of love, vows, emotional negotiations that lay bare the grip of domination Christine has kept in reserve. It's easy to hear about heartache. It's another thing to be confronted with it carved out in texts that won't be ignored. The courtroom falls quiet again as the lawyer for Christine reads from a text. "You don't get to walk away from the family, Christine. Not without consequences." The mood in the room changes in an instant. Robyn's head drops. Janelle glances away. Kody's face reddens, his lips clamped shut. Christine's lips quiver a fraction, but her voice is firm. "That was the moment I knew I wasn't free." The judge looks at her intently, then calls for a recess. The gavel rings out. The crowd breathes. Outside, news reporters surge to get reactions, microphones thrust through mayhem. Christine comes outside the courthouse, sunlight on her hair, a peculiar combination of relief and despair in her eyes. Robyn follows her in back, sidestepping questions as Kody remains inside, his shape visible in the frosted glass, a shadow of a man who's finally lost command of his tale. The second day of trial starts under a dark, oppressive sky that borders on intentional, as if even the weather is aware something sinister is about to unfold. Reporters stand outside the courthouse once more, speculating over the new mystery witness whose name still hasn't been released. Within, tension has taken over. Yesterday's curiosity is today all tension. Kody sits stiff, his eyes darkened by lack of sleep. Christine joins him a few moments later, dressed in serene calmness, but you can see she's preparing for the tempest that awaits her. The judge calls the room to order, and the bailiff cries out the name that causes a ripple of shock through the lot: Leon Brown. The courtroom gasps. Kody's head jerks up. For a moment, silence engulfs all. Leon, once Mariah, Meri, and Kody's child, walks toward the stand, calm but clearly shaken. This is not another witness. This is blood testifying against blood. Meri casts her eyes downward, shuddering. Leon puts up a hand, takes the oath, then meets Kody's gaze head-on, eyes fixed but that face filled with years unuttered anguish. "I did not want to be here." They start, voice subdued but audible, "but I can no longer remain silent." Christine observes, her expression impassive, as Leon speaks of the times when loyalty to their families crossed over into terror. Times they saw their mothers weep behind doors, times when silence was preferable to truth. The words burn like acid in the air. Kody attempts to keep his cool, but his lips press together, jaw throbbing. "Dad was off-camera different," Leon goes on. "He'd speak of unity, but it was only obedience. If you challenged him, you were betraying him." The audience stirs again. Kody's attorney objects, hearsay, but the judge permits the testimony to continue. Leon draws a breath. "This is not about hate," they say, voice shaking a little. "This is about accountability. We were taught that family is about loyalty, but loyalty does not equal silence." And that's when the audience feels it too, that crisp tug of reality that bites deeper than anything the evidence could. Robyn brushes away a tear from her cheek, telling something to her lawyer, while Meri remains frozen, caught between heartbreak and pride. Christine's attorney takes advantage of the moment to demonstrate to the jury how all those years of control touched everybody in that household. They present family video, the same smiling dinner the viewer witnessed on television, but with Leon's voiceover on it, explaining the tension beyond the edge of frame, the anxious looks, the forced laughter, the way Kody's approval was tantamount to money. The contrast is haunting. Even the judge in the courtroom appears moved. Leon completes their statement in a quiet tone, stating, "I still love my family, but love doesn't mean protecting a lie." The ensuing silence is choking. Kody finally breaks his restraint, speaking up. "You don't understand the pressure I was under," he states, cracking voice, but the words ring defensive, tiny. Leon moves toward him and whispers, "We all were, Dad." Today, the courthouse is different, weighs heavier, as if each word spoken yesterday still resonates in the walls. Reporters already line up before dawn, lenses fixed on the steps as if waiting for someone to break before the doors can open. Christine sits patiently at her table, eyes closed, hands folded, as if praying inside. Opposite her, Kody strides, his steps precise, his breathing rapid, and his tie a little askew, the face of a man losing grip not only on the case, but on himself. The judge arrives, and the buzz ceases. Unbeknownst to anyone, today's testimony will alter the pace of this trial for all eternity. The bailiff brings up the next witness, a private investigator who worked for Christine months ago, before the case started. The gray-haired man comes forward, composed, with a thick folder in his hands. He opens it, scattering photographs across the table, images of clandestine meetings late at night, transactions, phone bills that don't balance. The room leans in, even the journalists put their fingers on pause. Christine's lawyer starts softly, "Can you tell us what these depict?" The detective nods. They exhibit evidence of hidden assets and post-separation property transfers, assets under names associated with Robyn. A murmur of shock spreads throughout the courtroom. Robyn's eyes go wide. Kody's shoulders tense. The judge hunches forward, her voice growing tight. "Mr. Brown, do you want to speak?" Kody's head shakes, eyes flicking toward his attorney. The attorney stands up, protesting that these are improperly read documents, but the harm is done. The investigator goes on, telling in meticulous detail how financial reports gave way to accounts intended to remain concealed. Every sentence is a nail in the coffin of Kody's reputation. Christine observes quietly, her breathing even, her face pale but resolute. And here's where the viewers blink, because each disclosure lands harder than the previous one, drawing them in deeper into the tempest about to burst. The detective closes with a few words, "In my expert opinion, these actions were designed to keep certain assets out of division." The judge slowly nods, taking notes. Kody's fist crashes on the table once, shocking everyone. "That's not true," he yells, his voice ringing. The judge scowls. "Mr. Brown, another display and you will be ejected." The courtroom is ice now, chilled between reality and hysteria. Christine speaks at last, her voice level but biting. "All I ever wanted was the truth." The words strike deeper than any proof could. Robyn mutters something under her breath, tears running down her face. Kody glances at her, then at Christine, and his face softens for an instant, then hardens. "You wanted revenge," he says under his breath, but Christine doesn't reply. She stares ahead as though it was all a given. Outside, the storm rumbles in the distance, low and incessant, warning that the next hit hasn't yet fallen. The storm outside the courthouse is mirrored by the one that has developed inside. Rain pounds against the windows like it is attempting to smother the reality that is about to be revealed. The audience has been restless. Murmurs ripple through the gallery like a jolt of electricity. Kody arrives late, his eyes compressed with weariness and anger, while Christine arrives a few moments later, relaxed but detached, eyes set straight ahead. The judge feels the tension and calls for silence, her voice cutting through the din. Now, the testimony is of emotions, the kind that cannot be quantified by evidence but are felt by all. Christine's attorney rises, calling the next witness, Janelle, once more. But this time, Janelle's presence feels more substantial, more determined, as if she's finally prepared to testify without fear. She fiddles with the microphone, her hands shaking slightly, and begins. "I thought loyalty was about being quiet," she says quietly, "but being quiet only helped the bad people." The room comes to a stop. She continues to explain nights of argument, moments when Christine would plead to be listened to only for Kody to leave in the middle of a sentence. She shifts between sadness and indignation, the memories slicing deeper with each sentence. Kody fidgets uncomfortably, his lawyer mouthing something in his ear, but waving him away. Let her talk. He growls, voice low, eyes fixed on Janelle. For the first time, his belligerence appears more like despair. The attorney for Christine continues to probe. Did you ever see behavior that would be considered controlling? Janelle hesitates, tears welling in her eyes, then nods. Every day, she whispers. It wasn't yelling, it was choices. Where to stay, what to tell, whom to trust. The audience is silent now, holding their breath. Kody tightens his jaw, eyes brimming with tears but seething with anger. That's not control, he exclaims abruptly. That's leadership. The courtroom gasps. The judge bangs her gavel, warning him to be quiet. Christine doesn't blink. She just looks at him, her face an enigma but her silence more powerful than any shouting. And here, the audience senses the transition. This is no longer testimony, this is a family unraveling live. Janelle goes on, speaking of how Robyn's introduction became the tipping point, how everything altered when favoritism became exclusion. We weren't wives anymore, she says quietly. We were shadows floating around his decisions. Robyn hides her face in her hands, crying quietly, while Meri looks at the table, her lips quivering. The attorney wants to know if Janelle ever thought about walking out. She nods slowly. I thought about it every night, but I was scared. Not of losing the marriage, but of losing the only idea of family I'd ever had. The words strike like a knife. All viewers at home can sense the pain of years spent in silence. Christine finally finds her voice, soft. You didn't lose me. Janelle lifts her gaze, her eyes overflowing, and for the first time during the whole trial, there is a glimmer of warmth in the midst of all the suffering, a moment of mutual survival. The fourth day breaks under a gray canopy of rain, the courthouse steps being slick and glinting like glass as cameras click on through the drizzle, capturing the tension etched across every face. Inside, the fluorescent lights were quietly, the sole constant beat in a room whose hearts beat too rapidly. Christine sits upright, her eyes firm but hard, as Kody appears tired, his previously sharp self-assurance undermined by restless nights and suspect whispers. The judge arrives, the bailiff cries out for silence. The air itself is denser, anticipatory. Christine's attorney stands and calls the next witness, Robyn Brown. The response is instantaneous. Murmurs rise like a tide. Robyn advances, hands shaking as she is sworn in, her voice breaking on the word truth. She sits, not looking at Kody, eyes fixed instead on the microphone as if it were the sole trustworthy location to see. I didn't want this, she starts, voice low but trembling. All I ever wanted was a family that worked. Her words hover in the air, ephemeral, but the silence that follows is judgmental. Christine's attorney smiles slightly. Tell us what you mean by that. Robyn swallows hard. I figured if I just kept the peace, if I smiled enough, loved enough, everything would stay together. But it didn't. She pauses, looking in Kody's direction, where he gazes at her disbelieving. He told me there would be harmony, she says, but harmony was always choosing his side of the story. A journalist takes notes, pen scratching against paper like static. Kody shakes his head slowly, mumbling under his breath, That's not true. Robyn goes on, her resolve growing with each sentence. Across from me, he said Christine was jealous. Janelle was stubborn, Meri was cold. I believed him because I wanted to. She takes a shaky breath. He wasn't attempting to repair the family, though. He was attempting to master the tale. Those words fall hard. The courtroom takes a collective breath. This is the moment every viewer has been waiting for, the moment the last illusion starts to shatter. Christine regards her, not anger, but a sort of pity. Robyn blots a tear and continues, describing how Kody's rage would erupt when things got away from him, how he'd turn each argument into betrayal. The lawyer asks whether she ever felt scared. Robyn nods, almost inaudibly. Not of him hurting me, she says, but of disappointing him. It seemed like the entire world would end if I stopped consenting. The judge looks over at Kody, whose face burns with embarrassment and rage. His attorney comes in close to whisper to him, but Kody shoves him away, staring at Robyn as if he is seeing her for the first time. "You said you loved me," he whispers, voice cracking. Robyn finally looks him in the eye. "I did, but love isn't ever about obedience." There's a soft gasp of shock that ripples through the courtroom. Christine droops her head, tears pricking, this time not out of pain, but at the odd sense of relief at hearing truth aloud. Light from the morning seeps through the high courthouse windows, a thin wash that is colder than the day previous, as if even the sun hesitates to touch what's happening inside. Reporters cluster at the doors, their breath misting in the cold, swapping guesses for whether this trial will break at last what's left of the Brown family's reputation. Within, the air reeks of stale coffee and anxiety. Christine sits at the plaintiff's table, her face inscrutable, but her hands knot together under the table as if she's grasping something invisible and delicate, perhaps her patience. On the other side of the aisle, Kody is gaunt, tie unknotted, eyes red-rimmed. He hasn't slept. You can tell by the way he blinks too heavily, the way his fingers drum when no one's looking. The judge takes her seat, her tone sharper than ever as she calls for order. "We've heard testimony," she says, "but now we'll hear the evidence that supports it." A hush falls over the courtroom as Christine's lawyer stands and signals to an aide, who wheels in a television monitor and a small box of labeled drives. The initial clip plays, footage of the family's previous reality show archives, but this time raw. There's laughter to begin, the kind everyone reminisces about, the show's hallmark warmth, but then it turns. The camera captures arguments the public never witnessed, words mumbled in the broadcast but now as explicit as day. "You don't question me in front of the kids," Kody's voice snaps from the screen. The courtroom freezes. The next scene finds Christine stepping back into another room, whispering into her mic pack, "I can't do this anymore." The audience sits in stunned silence. This is where the truth ceases to be rumor and begins to be proof, and everyone feels the floor slip out from under them. Kody's attorney leapt to his feet, objecting to the clips as contextually misleading, but the judge overrides him, insisting the jury is entitled to the whole story. More clips roll, Christine sobbing alone in the car, Robyn storming through the kitchen after a fight, Meri softly begging producers to turn the cameras off. Each scene is an open wound. When the screen finally goes dark, there is only the sound of breathing, long, ragged, human. Christine sits forward, jaw shaking. Kody rubs his temples and murmurs something that sounds like prayer or denial. The judge clears her throat. "Mr. Brown, would you care to respond to what we've just witnessed?" He rises slowly, shoulders weighted, voice gruff. "Those were hard days," he says. "But a marriage, our type of marriage, was never simple. You battle, you forgive, you move on." His eyes flash in the direction of Christine. "At least you're supposed to." A soft stir passes through the courtroom. Even his lawyer seems uncomfortable. The judge clasps her hands, unimpressed. "That may be true, Mr. Brown, but we've seen suggest something beyond disagreement." Kody opens his mouth, then stops, realizing anything he says now might undo him completely. By the 6th day of trial, the courthouse feels like a cage, too bright, too crowded, every whisper echoing against the marble walls. The outside cameras no longer cease. They are now part of the landscape, greedy eyes for the next chink in the family to emerge. In the interior of the house, Christine enters first, in soothing shades that oppose the tempest raging within her. Kody follows several minutes later, his pace slower now, as if a man who is navigating the ruins of his own decisions. The judge appears tired, the jury tireder. Everyone has heard so much heartbreak for an eternity, and still it keeps coming. The bailiff says today's testimony will cover digital evidence, emails, messages, recorded calls compiled over years. Christine's attorney plugs in a laptop to the projector. An open file appears. The first message on the screen, Kody to the producers of the show, written during the family's public breakup. "Cut Christine's scenes down," it says. "She's not complying. Make Robyn the center." A buzz through the room. Christine doesn't even glance up. Then another message comes in, this one from Kody and Robyn. The tone is urgent and manipulative, a kind of closeness that sounds like a strategy. "If she goes, we are out of control of the story," he typed. You must assist me in keeping her silent. The judge's eyebrow twitches, the audience gasps. Kody goes white, his hand to his mouth. His attorney objects once more, but the objection withers beneath the radiance of the words on the screen. This is the time when all the viewers hold their breath, when the battle for reputation becomes the revelation of intent. Christine's attorney uses an audio clip next, a phone call Christine and Kody had after Christine said she was leaving. His voice remains even at first, then icy. "You're destroying everything we built," he says. Christine's response is gentle, almost mournful. "It was already broken, Kody. You just didn't want to see it." The silence that follows in the courtroom is long and heavy. Robyn wipes her eyes. Meri stares into her lap. The lawyer pauses the recording and lets the quiet linger. "Your Honor," she says, "we present this as evidence of coercion and psychological control." The judge nods, taking notes. Kody finally speaks, voice shaking. "You're twisting my words. That one was following months of treachery. You can't take it out of context." His tone sounds more protest than rebellion. Christine leans slightly toward him, her voice soft but assertive. "You can't manipulate context anymore." The gallery stirs once more. Even the court reporter looks up for an instant. Kody leans back, his eyes glassy. He's not the man who came into this courtroom days ago. He's smaller now, more subdued, deprived of his legend. The courtroom is quieter today, more subdued, denser, as if all those who are inside can feel that something permanent is going to occur. Even the reporters are more subdued, their constant buzz replaced by the quiet whir of mumbled prophecies. Christine sits in the front row, hands folded together, gazing at the ground, while Kody sits with eyes forward like a man witnessing his own dynasty disintegrate. Robyn appears exhausted, her skin colorless from lack of sleep, while Janelle's face holds the lines of someone too experienced to be shocked anymore. Meri, however, is changed. She is not the silent, uncertain woman of the earliest days of testimony, her back straight, when at last she rises to speak. The judge glances over at her, as if surprised. "Mrs. Brown, are you ready to continue your statement?" She nods, and when she begins, her voice is quiet but confident. "For years," she says, "I believed that silence was love. That maintaining peace meant embracing pain. But peace founded on fear is not peace at all. It's incarceration." Her words linger in the air like smoke. Christine gapes up at her, tears already gathering. Kody squirms uncomfortably, folding his arms, his jaw clenched. "Meri," he growls under his breath, "you don't have to do this." But she continues, her voice growing louder with each word. She speaks of how the show obscured their reality, how production fueled competition among the wives, how Kody's affection was used as a weapon to keep them loyal. "We weren't a family," she whispers. "We were a hierarchy." The courtroom is silent, with only the soft scratching of the court reporter's pen audible. And then she drops the bomb. Emails she had stored, secret for years, exchanged between Kody and producers on seasons of the show. She'd stored them in an unauthorized folder, not knowing why, perhaps for this exact moment. The emails indicate that storylines were manipulated, that some of those emotional showdowns were staged to shield Kody's reputation. One even suggested that Meri's emotional breakdown be exaggerated for drama because viewers connect with her sadness. The judge's eyes narrow. Kody looks like the air has been sucked from his lungs. His lawyer scrambles for a response, but the damage is already done. This is the moment where hearts crack open. The truth isn't just about betrayal, it's about the cost of pretending. The prosecution requests to submit the emails as new evidence, and after a tense pause, the judge agrees. Reporters start typing frantically. Whispers rise like a tide. Robyn's face twists in disbelief, and for the first time, Christine reaches over, taking Meri's hand. That small act, the very same women who had battled for love now clinging to one another for support, triggers an emotional wave throughout the courtroom. Even the judge's face cracks a little. Kody breaks his silence, voice shaking. "Meri, those were production choices, not mine. You know that." But she disbelievingly shakes her head, eyes shining. "You approved them." each and every one of them. The resultant silence is almost palpable. The air in the courtroom is thicker than ever, as if the very walls are holding their breath. This is it, the last day. Following weeks of testimony, betrayal, and the unraveling of truths, the sister wives' trial is closing out and the tension is excruciating. The gallery is full to the brim, cameras flashing at every movement, even every shift in seat. Christine is at the front with quiet strength, her face unreadable. Kody appears gaunt, his countenance pinched from lack of sleep and the gradual disintegration of the facade he struggled to uphold for so long. Robyn sits next to him, holding a tissue and shaking hands, while Janelle and Meri sit in tandem, something no one could have dreamed of at the beginning. The judge enters, his arrival slicing through the murmur of sounds like a knife. "We will now hear closing arguments," he states. Christine's attorney stands first, her tone measured and sharp. "Your Honor, this case is not about who loved harder or who went first. It's about manipulation, control, and emotional trauma brought about by the abuse of trust." Her words transition from empathy to precision as she slowly moves towards the jury. For a decade, the family you knew on TV was marketed as unity, was faith as something holy. But beneath those smiles were lies, contracts, and fear. Fear of speaking, fear of having children taken away, fear of being cut out of a story. She takes a pause, allowing that to be absorbed. Christine's decision to leave wasn't rebellion, it was survival. The courtroom falls silent, even the cameras pause. Kody's attorney stands up next, his tone cutting, his voice rising in practiced outrage. "My client is not a monster," he affirms. "He is a man who attempted to keep a family together under impossible scrutiny. There were mistakes, yes, but coercion. Abuse? That's not justice, it's vengeance masquerading as truth." Kody looks down at the floor, his hands shaking slightly. His lawyer's voice cracks beneath the force of his own argument. When it's finished, everyone looks back at Christine. She stands up slowly, and although she is not obligated to say anything, she requests of the judge permission to make one final statement to the court. The judge nods. She speaks, her voice soft but audible across the room. "I don't want revenge," she says. "I just want peace. But peace can't exist where truth is buried." Her words echo across the room like a bell ringing the death knell of a bygone era. This is the moment when silence screams more than any argument. When each viewer can feel the world tilt beneath the force of truth. Undefined. Kody glances up at her then, and for an instant, the years of anger slip away. Undefined. What remains are two individuals who once hoped for forever and found themselves on opposite sides of truth.